One of the first materials that you have to consider is the skin fabric. This is a piece of doll making jersey produced by Livyala, and it's a jersey because it has a right and a wrong side. So the right has little ribs and the back has little pearls. Or you could use an interlock. This one looks the same on both sides, and so you could call this lightweight or medium weight, and it's really easy to use. So you could also pick an interlock fabric, 100% cotton and 100% cotton to make your dolls with. Also going to be using a stuffing material, so I recommend you buy wool batting. Batting comes in big long sheets that are sort of even in layers. You can split them down the middle to create thinner layers, or you can tear them into strips as we're going to be doing to roll the head of our doll. To shape the head, you're going to be using stockinette. This is stockinette and it usually comes in a tube, right? So you will use this to bound and sculpt the head. You can also buy cotton gauze. It's much thinner and a little bit stretchier, but both work absolutely fine for creating the doll head. So stockinette, which is this one, or cotton gauze. To make the doll hair, you will be using Dollmaking mohair yarn, and so I have two brands here and two different kinds. I have this brand. It's made by Little Oki Dolls, and this brand is made by Cameron's. And it's called Dolly Mo, and you can find suppliers for both. So you could either make the hair for the dolls with this straight mohair that has these kind of loose fibers, which are going to help us create the hair for your doll. You will also need a crochet hook and sewing thread that matches the hair color that you will be using. You could also use loop mohair or mohair boucle. It's a yarn that has these little loops, and these little loops become kind of curly hair. So you could also choose to use loop mohair. You can find loop mohair or mohair boucle from both brands, from the Wild brand produced by Little Oki Dolls, or the mohair boucle mohair loop yarn produced by Dolly Mo. To embroider the eyes of your doll, you're going to require embroidery thread or cotton floss. I prefer to use DMC brand as it's really good quality. So you're going to need two colors, one color for the eyes and one color for the mouth. You need to kind of keep in mind how these colors are going to look against the skin tone and against the hair color. So it pays to have all of your materials ready and compare how they look, keeping in mind that the skin color is going to change in shade once you put it over the doll, as the light wool underneath it will slightly lighten the color. Sometimes you have to wait until you have the doll created in order to pick the right shade. But in the meantime, you can start looking at the color shades that you would like and buy a few shades of pinks or reds for the lips. You're going to need an assortment of threads. First, you're going to need sewing thread to sew the body, close the head, assemble the doll. So you need to pick a color of thread that matches the skin tone that you will be using. I like to use 100% polyester thread by Gutermann, but you can use any other sewing thread that you like. You can use 100% cotton. I just find that 100% polyester breaks less for me, so it's the one I prefer using. You're gonna need strong craft thread to tie the head, sculpt the cheeks and the nose and all of that. So I recommend a strong, thin craft thread that is durable. I like to use this one by Coats. I like to use this brand, Coats Turco Satin, as it's really strong and it helps me not have to use as much to double the threads when I'm tying the doll heads. You could also use a strong crochet thread that is not too thick so that you can have fine sculpt lines, but this one, if you pull hard on it, this one also doesn't break, okay? Then you're going to need an assortment of needles. You're gonna need sewing needles for sewing the hair, shaping the feet, and sewing the head to the torso of the doll. Then you're gonna need embroidery needles so that you can use 2 or 3 strands of cotton floss or embroidery thread and embroider the eyes on your doll. So sewing needles and embroidery needles. And then you're going to need a long doll making needle, preferably one that is not too thick, that the eye is not too wide, because you don't want to create very deep holes in the skin fabric. So a long doll making needle, it doesn't have to be that long, it can be somewhere along this length. That might be enough for the doll head. So a doll making needle, sewing needles, and embroidery needles. You're also going to need some sort of marking material to mark the body pattern on the skin fabric. I use a pencil, but to mark things on the skin like the eyes, I like to use a disappearing ink marker. I like this purple one that comes with an eraser on the other side, just so that I can make, if I need to make corrections to the eye shape, I can use this one. I also recommend you get a set of hemo studs or forceps. They have a locking mechanism which helps to put pieces, to hold pieces together as you're working, to bring inside little bits of wool or firm up certain areas. And they also help as pincers or pliers to pull needles out of awkward corners. So you can buy them in this length, you can buy them longer, you can buy them without the curved tip. And you're gonna need some sort of stuffing tool. I prefer obviously to use the wool one, which is a tool that my husband created for me. You can also use a large wooden needle or metal knitting needle, or a wooden spoon or a wooden dowel, anything that helps you push wool inside the body of your doll. And you're gonna need a variety of things like scissors, machine sewing needles. I like to use Universal 70-10. You're gonna need a measuring tape, a sewing dish is also helpful, a crochet hook, a thimble for when you're sewing, so pins, etc., etc. And last but not least, you're going to need an assortment of fabrics to dress your dolls in. I recommend to have some little bundles of joy, I call them, that inspire you to make the clothes. So I have clothes both for my girl and for my boy. So because this little doll making series, we're going to be creating a set of dolls inspired by the folk tale or fairy tale of Hansel and Gretel. So you need to think of outfits that you would like to make in the fabrics. I will show you how I will dress these dolls, and I will give you a tutorial for each. So put aside a bundle of fabrics that inspire you to make clothes for your doll. Welcome to this doll making series. I hope you enjoy going with me for the next 2 months in the creation of Hansel and Gretel. Good luck!